The climactic Battle of Platoon, the most famous Vietnam War film ever made, is not fiction. It happened on January 2nd, 1968. Firebase Burt in northern Tay Ninh province was 7 miles from the Cambodian border. Oliver Stone was there with B Company, 3rd Battalion, 22nd Infantry. After the war, he reportedly doubted his own memory of the night, until a regimental reunion confirmed it was real. The actual battle was worse than the movie. 2 Viet Cong regiments attacked, 400 enemy dead. Howitzers were lowered to horizontal and fired anti-personnel flechette rounds point blank into waves of attacking infantry. Bodies were nailed to trees by steel darts. An AC-47 gunship made tracers that looked like streams of blood falling from the sky. No American network covered it. Tet, 29 days later, erased it from history. The closest thing Firebase Burt has to a national monument is a Hollywood film. In the last days of December 1967, the 3rd Brigade of the 25th Infantry Division carved a hole in the canopy and called it Firebase Burt. Operation Yellowstone had pushed American forces into country the Viet Cong considered their backyard, the trail network funneling men and materiel from Cambodian sanctuaries toward Saigon. Burt's job was artillery reach. Extend the howitzers far enough forward to interdict the infiltration routes. Simple enough on a map. On the ground, it meant a perimeter hacked out of triple canopy jungle, occupied roughly 4 days, with fields of fire still uncleared in front of the eastern bunker line. A Pope-brokered New Year's ceasefire was supposed to be in effect. The Viet Cong had publicly agreed to honor it. On the morning of January 1st, 1968, a dawn sweep outside the wire recovered 2 dead Viet Cong. One was an officer. He carried a Russian pistol and 82mm mortar firing tables, plus documents identifying the 271st and 272nd Regiments of the 9th Viet Cong Division. Not a local guerrilla. A main force reconnaissance officer dead 200 meters from the perimeter of a base that had existed for 4 days. Captain Jerry Brown, adjutant of the 3rd Battalion, 22nd Infantry, began documenting what would become the declassified after-action report. It was the single most important primary record of what happened next. By 1845 that evening, an ambush patrol 200 meters east had been hit. 2 Americans were killed. By 2000 hours, 60mm mortar rounds were falling on the battalion command post. By 2300, every listening post around the perimeter was reporting continuous movement in the tree line. Battalion commanders knew something was out there. What they did not know was the scale. 2 full regiments, 4 assault battalions, 2 in reserve, roughly 2,500 men. The same main force formations had overrun Firebase Gold at Soi Tre 9 months earlier. The Viet Cong saw a 4-day-old firebase with incomplete defenses. What they did not see was what was actually inside the wire. Popular retellings sometimes describe Burt as 150 to 400 men. That figure describes individual perimeter companies. It does not describe the base. 2 full U.S. infantry battalions held that perimeter. The 2nd Battalion, 22nd Infantry, known as Triple Deuce, was mechanized under Lieutenant Colonel Ralph W. Julian, with M113 armored personnel carriers, hull down on the western half. The 3rd Battalion, 22nd Infantry, the Regulars, was straight-leg infantry under Lieutenant Colonel James E. Hilmar, holding the east behind 40 newly built bunkers. This was the battalion Oliver Stone served in. B Company was under Captain Robert Hemphill. That detail matters later. Close to 1,000 defenders, and the weapons they brought were not standard firebase fare. 11 M102 howitzers of the 2nd Battalion, 77th Artillery, sat in the southern perimeter. These were not indirect fire assets waiting for a call from an observer miles away. These guns were on the line. When the assault came, the crews would lower those tubes to horizontal and fire directly into attacking infantry, not high explosive, but the M546 Beehive round. 8,000 steel flechettes per shell, little finned darts the size of a finishing nail, ejected by a mechanical time fuse. Each round turned a 105mm howitzer into a shotgun the size of a car. 5 M109 self-propelled howitzers of the 3rd Battalion, 13th Artillery covered the northern perimeter with 155mm direct fire. 2 M55 quad 50 mounts, 4 50 caliber machine guns on a single pedestal delivering roughly 2,000 rounds per minute of converged tracer sat on the west and south. The Americans and the Viet Cong called them the same thing, meat choppers. Two M42 Dusters added twin 40mm anti-aircraft cannons repurposed for killing men on the ground. One of the men inside the wire that night was Lieutenant Dennis Adkins, 3rd Platoon Leader, C Company, 3rd Battalion, 22nd Infantry. By 0200, Adkins would be lying on his back with a flechette through his stomach and out his back, pinned under dead Viet Cong who were using his body as a shield. He survived. But how he survived only makes sense after you understand what the artillery did. The main attack began at 23:30 on January 1st with a concentrated mortar preparation of 260mm rounds in 15 minutes. Professional, rehearsed, not harassment fire. At 23:45, automatic weapons opened on the southern perimeter. At 0001 on January 2nd, the ground assault hit the northern sector in earnest, then peeled south along the west side of the road, while a second element drove along the southern ditches toward Captain Fishburne's C Company on the east. By roughly 0100, the center bunker on C Company's eastern perimeter had been blown open. Viet Cong poured through the breach. Lieutenant Adkins described it later the way a mighty flood races through a failed levee. He and his radio operator, David Smitty Smith, tried to reinforce the company command post. Smith was killed by a grenade or a rocket-propelled grenade blast before they reached it. Adkins kept moving. Then the howitzers spoke. The crews of the 277 artillery lowered their tubes to near horizontal and began firing Beehive rounds point blank across C Company's perimeter. 8,000 flechettes per round. Green star shells were fired before each shot to warn friendlies, standard doctrine. But the fires were so continuous, so relentless that the battalion recon platoon could not physically cross through that lane to reinforce until 0445. Nearly 4 hours of steel darts filled the air in sheets. Here is the tactical logic the Viet Cong never accounted for. They had rehearsed for indirect fire, shells arcing in from behind the base, imprecise at close range, dangerous to the defenders who would have to call it onto their own positions. What they got was direct fire. Howitzers were pointed straight at them at a range where every flechette hit flesh. They had planned their assault geometry around one kind of weapon. They walked into another. The layers of fire compounded. The quad 50 caliber machine guns of D Battery, 71st Artillery poured converging tracers across the west and south assault lanes. The Dusters of 5th Battalion, 2nd Artillery added twin 40mm cannon fire into the same killing ground. Sappers breached the southern razor wire around 0230 and were repulsed by point-blank Beehive rounds from the 277 artillery crews firing anti-personnel shotgun rounds at men they could see. Above the perimeter, an AC-47 Spooky arrived on station and opened with 3 7.62mm miniguns in its distinctive circling pattern. A B Company veteran later described Spooky's tracers as streams of blood coming down from the sky. USAF tactical aircraft placed napalm and cluster munitions against Viet Cong assembly areas southeast of Company C between 0230 and 0330. Outside the wire, Lieutenant Mike Balser's 16-man ambush patrol from C Company's 2nd Platoon had been overrun. Balser fought his way back up the road from the south. That patrol finished the night with 1 killed by a rocket-propelled grenade, 11 wounded, and 1 killed by friendly close air support. That fact is explicitly documented in Captain Brown's after-action report. No one hit it. Tom Martin, callsign Blackhawk 67 of the 187th Assault Helicopter Company, flew over the perimeter at dawn. What he saw, Viet Cong bodies nailed to trees by flechettes, the wire carpeted with the dead, stayed with him. A battery, 313 artillery gunner remembered the fire direction center, ordering his gun to shoot directly into the waves of Viet Cong on the northeast and east perimeter. By 0500, the Viet Cong broke contact. By dawn, the tree line was a graveyard. 23 Americans killed, 153 wounded, between 379 and 401 Viet Cong dead, confirmed, with eyewitness estimates from burial details reaching 550. The bodies were bulldozed into mass graves. Attempts to burn them with diesel fuel failed to consume the remains. The body count inflation that haunts Vietnam-era statistics applies only loosely here. The range, 348 from the initial wire service report, 379 from the official after-action record, 401 from unit histories, roughly 550 from eyewitnesses, is remarkably tight for a war where numbers were routinely fabricated. A conservative figure of 400 Viet Cong killed is well supported by physical evidence that was, by every account, overwhelming. The 9th Viet Cong Division had to be reconstituted before it could fight again. 4 months to rebuild from a single night. When it returned, the same formation hit the Australian 1st Task Force at Coral Balmoral and ran into the Commonwealth equivalent of the same weapons. But the victory at Burt was not clean. The base was 4 days old. Fields of fire had not been cleared in the dense jungle in front of Company C's positions, the exact sector that was breached. The perimeter was penetrated in at least 2 places. 2 to 3 Viet Cong got inside Company A's wire. Reserves and armored personnel carriers had to be committed to seal the gaps. There was a moment that night that no after-action report can reduce to a statistic. During the 2000 mortar barrage, 3 soldiers left an A Company bunker. 2 returned. They refused to re-enter. They heard noise inside. They did not grenade the bunker. They were afraid their missing man was still in there. He was found dead inside the next morning. No one who has never stood outside a dark bunker in a mortar barrage, listening to something move inside, knowing your friend might be the thing that moves, no one gets to judge that decision. And there was friendly fire. At least 1 American soldier of the C Company ambush patrol was killed by close air support. The Beehive rounds that saved Company C were fired directly across friendly positions. Lieutenant Adkins, pinned under dead Viet Cong, flechette through his torso, was wounded by the same weapon system that saved the base. A 105mm round landed 10 feet from where he lay, killed the enemy using his body as cover and threw him clear. Saved and wounded by the same guns. That is not a contradiction. That is what Firebase Burt was. The New York Times ran a wire piece. No network correspondent filed from Burt. 29 days later, TET swallowed everything. The strategic narrative, the political debate, the memory of a ceasefire violation that foreshadowed the single most consequential truce violation of the entire war. Nobody noticed the rehearsal. Oliver Stone came home from B Company, 322 Infantry, and reportedly doubted his own memory of the night. A 25th Infantry Division reunion confirmed it actually happened. The climactic Battle of Platoon, the most famous Vietnam War film ever made, is a direct adaptation of Firebase Burt. Captain Harris, played by Dale Dye, stands in for Captain Robert Hemphill. Stone cameos as the battalion commander killed by a sapper in the command bunker. No dedicated physical memorial exists at the site. It is now dense jungle. Veterans have made private pilgrimages. The reunions of the 22nd Infantry Regiment Society and the C-322 Association continue. The after-action report that Captain Jerry Brown wrote in the hours after dawn, when the wire was still full of the dead, is hosted on a veteran's website. The closest thing Firebase Burt has to a national monument is a Hollywood film, made by a man who wasn't sure it happened, about a night that killed 400 men and made no news at all.